Roberto, thank you very much for spending time with me now. So one of the things that we discovered recently in our research of the global agri-food tech ecosystem is that last year investment in agri-food tech was only 6% of all investment in venture capital globally. And there's many ways you can look at that and know that that's underinvested, whether you look at the proportion of GDP that agriculture contributes to, which is about 10%. It's more if you think about all food systems globally. So how have you seen with your research, how have you seen money coming into this space? I know you track a lot of the funds that are going on. I mean, do you think it's underinvested?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Very good point. And I would agree it's underinvested. Actually, you can also look at workforce in the sector. You can look also from a greenhouse gas emissions as well. So the sector definitely should see more VC money coming in. I think this is part of a broader aspect about the sector, not just VC, but more broadly about investing in food and ag. This is a sector that when you talk to investors, you talk to family offices, institutional investors, there is always, I would say, a perception that, the risks are there, that there is less knowledge about how to invest in the space. There are also perceptions about, some of the challenges regarding the fragmentation in the sector, maybe it's also some informality, and also they even look at, or they think about the challenges on profitability in the sector. And so I think a lot of these perceptions and concerns combined make investors a bit more cautious about this sector compared to others. But on the positive side, I think this has been changing over time. So even today, we would say we are in the early innings. As an asset class, the food and ag space, we could say that it's really still in the early innings. But you look back to the last 15 years, and we have seen definitely growing investment flow. We have seen a lot of new investment funds investing in farmland, in private equity, in venture. So while the short answer is yes, it's underinvested, I think the trend is positive, is going in the right direction. And then we should ask ourselves, what can we do to accelerate this flow?
So how many more funds are there today focused on food and ag than when you first started researching the space?
Yeah, so I think if you look at back in 2005, there were around 50 funds globally investing in food and ag. Now you fast forward to 2023, we have over 900 funds with assets under management above 140 billion. And again, these are 900 GPs, 900 teams investing solely in food and ag. It could be farmland, it could be private equity, venture. Actually, venture alone, I think, is getting closer to 260 or more. And so, the trend is there. I think also the current moment we are, with more caution in the markets and especially in the VC space, will probably limit the investment flow in the next coming quarters. But if we look on a longer term basis, I believe that there are many opportunities. I think one needs to understand, how we got to where we are today and how the market is going to evolve in the next coming years.
So you have two different roles. You're managing director of Valoral Advisors, and they also work at the Yield Lab Latam, which is a focused fund here in the region. And recently, the Yield Lab Latam has done a first or second close of its fund on about 20 million. How have those conversations gone with LPs? So you're talking about some of the questions that investors have. Is this a riskier asset class to others? How can we get comfortable with it? How have you been responding, and what's been resonating with them?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think when you look at Latin America as a whole today, is the region that has the largest net surplus of food to the world. This means that despite the political and social and economic uncertainty or volatility that you have typically in Latin America, people recognize that the region has a major role in supplying food to the world. And that's why when we engage with the investors, what you notice is that there is this understanding, this realization that this is probably the most competitive, the most critical sector in this region. And so it deserves attention by these investors. I think that it's interesting to look at the different kind of investors that deploy money in the VC space, in the agri-food tech space in Latin America. I believe particularly that in the last year or so, we have seen more engagement, especially from companies and from corporates in general. And this probably has to do with the fact that corporates have a longer-term view and also more strategic view of the sector and the region. In contrast, some of the more financial investors, they may be more sensible to the, or sensitive, to the specific conditions in the market today. But all in all, and we are in Brazil today, we see the whole potential that is happening here. So I think in general, investors understand that if there is one industry where you can invest in VC in Latam, it's the food and ag space.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the exit landscape? So it's a big question mark, and we're coming up to 10 years since Monsanto bought the Climate Corporation for $1 billion, which was arguably flung the whole industry into the spotlight. We haven't had similar exits like that. We've had a few sort of unsuccessful SPACs. We've had some acquisitions by the major corporates that have been a lot smaller, around 300 million and so on. What do you think is going on there? There's different kind of arguments that it's still very early days for agri-food tech, but other people are worried that there's something more, a more structural issue going on.
Yeah, well, it's another talking point which is very important among managers, investors. I'll tell you something. In Latin America, we currently map close to 2,000 agri-food tech startups, okay? And we have also mapped around 80 exits in this space over the last 12 years or so. But here's the caveat. Actually, out of those 80, probably there are 10 which were successful in a way. And there are a lot which were, I would say neutral exits or, situations where companies also had some kind of distress and they were absorbed or merged into other companies. So it's true that still we're to see substantial exits or very successful exits in this industry. I believe that we will see them. They are coming, but it takes time. And as we all know, the food and ag space is not as other sectors where you see a lot of acceleration and scale. It will take time here, but I believe it's coming. I think that today it's becoming clear that corporates will be leading those exits, most likely. We also see a growing role by private equity players to take the next stage of what the VCs are doing. So this is going to be an interesting development in the future. We also see some consolidation even among startups here in the region. But yeah, I mean, we still need to get more validation there. Early days, yeah.
And so you do think that the corporates are going to be acquisitive? Yeah, I sometimes have a concern that they're so defensive. Oftentimes they've been trying to build things themselves internally instead of buying startups, which seems to be quite different from maybe like the healthcare space. Do you think that's just, again, because it's early days and that actually they'll soon realize that acquiring in technologies is going to be a better solution for them?
I mean, the simple answer is I don't know. Again, like I can say that, for example, we like obviously all the data to support the assessments we do. We have seen almost 2,500 M&A transactions in the food and ag space over the last 14 years in Latin America. Actually, a lot of them happening in Brazil, almost more than half of them. When you compare that number with the number of agri-food tech deals, still very, very tiny. In the long run, one should expect that corporates will become more active. I think at least the experience that we have seen so far is that this is a sector that is more traditional, more conservative in the way of thinking. So you could also argue that they could be less keen to acquire companies and even paying, high valuations. So we still need to see what's going to happen. I don't have a clear answer. Yeah.
Okay, lastly, what types of technologies get you really excited at Yield Lab Latam? What are you looking for and what are some of the strengths of Latam agri-tech?
Yeah, well, I tend to look at the opportunities mostly from a I would say, vertical point of view of what the different ag sectors need across the region. So as you know, I like to say that Latin America is a massive block of land, conducive weather, ample natural resources, water, soil, climate. However, there are a lot of different realities by country and by sector. If you think about row crops, permanent crops, livestock, forestry, aquaculture, and so on. So I think about what are the main interesting and relevant solutions for each of these verticals, and also in different countries, because obviously the way that permanent crops work in Chile or Peru is quite different than the way it works in Central America. So in that sense, I think that we continue to see, a very broad set of opportunities. When you look at, for example, novel production systems, including indoor farming or aquaculture, the region is actually not developed at all there. And so I think we can learn from some of the successes, but also some of the challenges that we have seen elsewhere, and see what can be more relevant and better adapted in the region. I also think about mechanization and automation, because definitely nobody can say that we are going to be the developers of robotics in Latin America, especially compared to the US, Israel, or Europe. Yet we can also think how basic mechanization can help in different crops, in different kind of production systems. Think about irrigation as well. The same applies with biologicals. We see biologicals as a major area of investment today in Europe, in North America. As we know, biologicals have to be very well adapted to the reality of specific crops, specific soil conditions and climate conditions. So that's definitely one exciting area for us. And all the big area of precision ag, digital, big data, even farm management systems, it looks like already it's like legacy area now, and yet there is so much to be done, because somebody could argue that the digitalization level today in the region is really, really low, okay? So there are opportunities there, but how you play that, is it a consolidation? What is it needed exactly, right? And then of course we have other areas, everything around fintech. You're well aware that places like Mexico, Brazil, Colombia are some of the places where digital solutions to help disintermediate the financial sector and make it more efficient, make it more accessible. That's an interesting area. And what else? Well, I could not forget mentioning all the buzz around climate tech, carbon markets, region ag. I believe that there's still a lot of question marks on the regulatory side, how that is going to play. We have the same questions in more developed markets like Europe or North America. But again, Latin America has a major role to play because of the carbon footprint, the water footprint that we have here. So as you see, many regions to look at, many sectors to look at.